I'm Lisa Feely, your host for An Accountable Catholic. As followers of Jesus and believers in a great God, we really need to commit to being more accountable to our family and our friends and our neighbors and our community. So tonight we're going to be talking about giving power to truth before speaking truth to power. And my guest tonight, which you'll hear from in a few minutes, and I will be discussing this for the next half hour. So thank you for joining us tonight. And we have a really good discussion on having Parveen join us and how he has seen truth in action and why being accountable is really an important choice that we need to make. So the topic again is power to truth before we try to speak truth to power. So what do I mean? Well, Parveen and I will share that with you in a few minutes. So let me introduce our guest. I am excited to welcome Mr. Parveen Johnny. He comes to us from his home in Indianapolis, Indiana, so a little far away from our Charlotte, North Carolina, and our South Carolina friends as well. So welcome, Parveen. I'd love for you to share your story with us.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be with you. It's always great to catch up with you, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and what at this time of year is really going to turn out to be a great fireside chat, if you will.
That's right.
So just by background,
yes, we'd love to hear that.
Parveen Chan, and I've lived here in Indiana for about 8 years. I've been very fortunate to be blessed with not only a loving wife, 2 great kids, a granddaughter, a son-in-law, but I'm much more than that. I'm also an immigrant and an executive here in the business community, and I've had a chance to really work with people from across the continuum. And I'm just fortunate in my life to be very blessed with many of those things, and great to be here with you.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Parveen, you have had a really interesting life, and just to share for our audience, I think you have such a talent to help people really gain insights and looking at them from a different way and challenging us, I think, to be better people and better leaders for sure. I'd love if you'd share how you really came to our country, your background, your mom and dad, and how they helped you. I think as we get into the topic of truth, how they helped you, I guess, form your own thoughts on how you were going to try to succeed in America.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those words of praise. But, you know, I've been helped along my journey, and that foundation was really set by my parents. We came here in 1975. I was the oldest. I am the oldest of 3 kids. And my parents decided to uproot themselves and their family, their growing family, from India in 1975. And we settled in the Washington, D.C. area. So I've been on the East Coast for a little bit, ultimately settling in St. Louis. And along the way, my parents blessed us with the freedoms that we enjoy here. And one of those freedoms was allowing us to explore and really just setting the foundation for us as a family to not only learn and continuously learn, but to always explore. And I'm very, very blessed by that foundation that my parents set. And so in the 1980s, when we finally settled in St. Louis, I had a chance to work with many people in high school as well as in the college and then graduate school, ultimately settling along on a career in the healthcare field. And I really owe my parents a great deal of gratitude for not only lifting us up from another country, taking that plunge as a family, coming here, embracing the promises of this great land, and ultimately fulfilling what I believe is the American dream, for not only for me, my brother, his family, my sister and her family, but also our children now. So it's really that foundation that my parents provided me that has allowed us to be successful.
Well, terrific. Well, you know, as you know, and we've been friends for a few years now, I recently wrote a book on accountability. So the topic is pretty near and dear to my heart. And I think accountability goes hand in hand with seeking out the truth, I think. And so when I came up with this topic for tonight's show to talk about power to truth before speaking truth to power, what I'm really referring to, and you and I have chatted a little bit about this, is there's so much misinformation out there right now, right? You've got social media, you have TV, You have radio, just kind of like what you and I are doing now. And people are just really confused. So I think we're in a challenging situation right now to truly find what is the truth. And so I'm referring kind of to the more recent trend where so many people think, I don't even know what to believe anymore, right? There's so much going on. And I think people are getting very emotional, and then they're jumping on a bandwagon because they want to right or wrong, right? So we all want to help, right? We're all helpful people, and especially as Christians. But I'm really confident that most people really haven't vetted the truth that they think that they're righting the wrong for or whatever. So do you have some thoughts on, in your experience, especially, I guess, you've traveled as much as I have, Parveen, but coming from an immigrant background and coming in the world of healthcare, especially, do you have some thoughts on how do we help people to understand what the real truth is and seeking that truth out?
Yeah, I think, when we first started talking about the topic, when you started to explain to me how you were thinking about this, I was a little unsure. But the more and more we had the dialogue of power to truth. Think about that statement for a second. Power to truth. And that's foundational. I think it's imperative that we actually find that meaning that really drives not only our motives, our intentions, how we look at the world, how we look at those from across the aisle or the table or the desk. And if we really are true to our surroundings, if we're really true to our purpose, or we're really true to a higher calling, I think that statement itself is very revealing. And I think only through that foundational, fundamental mind shift that when you and I first started talking about this, it was almost like a light bulb went off in terms of, that's exactly it. You've got to find that power to truth, that driving force that really makes you wake up in the day, in the morning, and then really drive to what it is that we need to fulfill our promise and our full potential. So I think that's a mind shift of a change. I think a couple of other things that I've taken into not only business practice, but also applied it to a family setting is really just fundamentally breaking down what we do, why we do it, who we're doing it with, and what we hope to leave behind. I think it's imperative that this year alone, we start to really take account of our actions, our daily actions, because at the end of the day, we really have to look at what are we leaving behind. So I think just having that fundamental mind shift for me a few months ago when you and I first started talking about this was a breakthrough moment. And I think the more and more we have that dialogue, I think the more people will have that similar breakthrough moment.
Yeah, I love how you said what you leave behind too. I think so many people are caught up in every day, right? We have so much going on, especially as busy executives like yourself. And it's so easy to get caught up in the moment and not think bigger term. But I think, at least for us as Catholics and Christians, myself and many of our listeners, I think it's so important we have a duty to seek the truth first and not just jump on an emotional bandwagon and try to, think that, oh boy, I heard this, yesterday on Facebook or on, Twitter or whatever, and, get all riled up, right, and all emotional. And then we're really not thinking about the long-term picture. And I think, one of the things that I discovered in the book when I was doing research, or discovered and wrote in the book, I guess, was like the seventh generation theory or whatever by the Iroquois. And they said, all of us would do a much better job thinking 7 generations ahead. So to me, if we could seek the truth and think about the future, and really what we value, right, that we're really living our purpose. I think you said that's great. And I think being accountable to me includes seeking that truth, understanding the truth, figuring out how it reconciles to the values we're bringing to the table, what we value, and then trying to move forward and not be so emotional. Because it might sound silly to say truth has got to have facts in it, but I think so much we don't think about the facts, right? We just make up our own truths. And it's like, that's not the way the real world works, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think we owe it to ourselves. I think we owe it to our communities. I think we owe it to our organizations that we may be affiliated with, the companies that we work for, that we have to put in the effort to search for that truth and not let all the other things influence us in a way that we sometimes, when we think about and we're not certain, or there is a great deal of uncertainty, I think we owe it to ourselves to really search for that truth and not be, a slave to the media outlets that are there, not be a slave to social media, for example. And social media is a great thing. Trust me. I mean, we've used it in the last several months with the pandemic to really, really help communicate the truth. But we have to do our own homework. And I just keep thinking back to the applications that you and I are talking about. Whether you're running a $1 million business, whether you're running a $1 billion business, or you're running your own household, I think we owe it to ourselves to be very, very centered on the truth and how we can take the things that are around us and build on those in terms of our higher purpose. And I think what's one of the key things, not only in your book, but also just the dialogue that you and I have had over the course of the last year and a half, or a couple of years now, really breaks down how we need to bring back that sentiment that the truth will make us free. And I think one of the things that we have to get to is really just understanding what the truth means and across all sectors of our society.
Well, it should prevail, and it doesn't. It's not supposed to change with the weather. So I always kind of feel like when I was a little kid, my parents would say, it's really never a good idea to lie or make up stories because you're never going to remember what you made up. Whereas the truth should be very logical. I tend to be a very logical, numbers-oriented person, so I'd rather seek out, find that research and stuff. But we've got to take a real short break here so that our station Carolina Catholic Radio will do a little bit of a announcement, and then we'll be right back.
Carolina Catholic Radio is excited to announce an alliance with Lisa Feely, author of An Accountable American. Her new book offers a blueprint to every person who wants to embrace how to be accountable. Learn how positively to impact your life and the lives of anyone around you. 50% of the book profits will be donated to a local 501c3 Catholic charity, including Carolina Catholic Radio and those affiliated with us. 2020 was a tough year for many people. Consider donating to charity by buying a copy of An Accountable American, just $20 on our website. Achieving accountability is a great way to start the new year. If you want to learn how to achieve enlightenment, peace, and prosperity, this is a great start. Now back to An Accountable Catholic Radio Show.
Okay, well, we're back with Parveens. Let's continue our conversation. I got to thinking, Parveen, I mean, a lot we're doing in our working world, of course, but what do you think we can do also as parents, I guess, as sisters, as brothers, as friends, understand the importance, I guess, of putting in what it's going to take to look at that bigger picture and understanding. I think a lot of people underestimate their circle of influence, right? So what you say actions speak louder than words, but I think a lot of people don't put some thought into that.
Yeah. So, what I've been thinking about lately a lot has been how do we start to reimagine, how do we start to focus? And really the question mark is the how to focus. We have been plagued by so many distractions, and those distractions tend to sway and dissuade you from a purpose, whether it's a higher purpose, whether it is your full potential. It is really on focus and purpose. So, 4 or 5 main priorities in my life. Obviously, being a immigrant, very, very fortunate to be here in the United States. I have many drivers. One of those is faith. The second is obviously being in the healthcare industry is my overall health, that of my family, siblings, my parents, my mother, my dad just recently passed away. It's just health. The third is around family and everything related to family. So that's another focal point for me. And then in the business world, obviously, given my role in the organization that I am fortunate enough to lead, and that is really centered around team and teamwork. So, my faith drives me. That of my family drives me. My health and how much more cognizant I am as I age of my own health, my family, as well as team as a whole. So those four things really are at the core of what I say that we need to focus on. And so minimize the distractions and then focus on those core things that are true to you.
I love it. You call it distractions. I've named it noise when I refer to it in my book, because I think it's so negative, right? So it's kind of like the old saying in customer service, which I know in healthcare you know so well, is you have one negative and it kind of outshines 20 positives, right? So everyone's concentrating on, oh my gosh, this was so negative. But that's what I hear a lot as I travel the country, is that we feel really divided. And especially, I'm going to kind of switch back into the working world. We're afraid of what we can and can't say because we don't want to be called out. So when we go back to this power to truth before speaking truth to power, I feel like what I'm hearing from a lot of people in the conversations I've been able to have, I think some really good engaging ones, simply put, we're not treating people with respect anymore because we don't want to have these conversations, and we'll just start kind of yelling or talking over one another. And so I think so many people are, oh, well, I just can't bring up my opinion because someone's going to, call me some kind of a name, right? They're going to label it. So there's all this noise and all this labeling going on. How do you deal with that as a very senior leader in a big organization?
Yeah, I think there are many ways to deal with that. One is just to allow for a culture that encompasses different viewpoints without labels. I think that's a key thing that we have somewhat gotten away with. I keep thinking through every so often in our lives, you have to take stock of everything that's going around you, and you have to, at some point, at some times, really just say enough. Whether it's a distraction, whether it's noise, and I love that word noise because that's what it is. We have to basically come back and say no, and then become focused. So in the business setting, and this goes beyond just the business setting, but I think a couple of things are front of mind for me. One is really just building a level of trust within your peer group. So, one of the things that I put out there for all of my teams, and I've been fortunate in my career to have as an executive in faith-based institutions. And that really, really built or helped build my mindset on how important trust is. Trust with your partners, trust with those that report to you, trust those that you report to, your boards, whatever it may be. So that's one. The second piece of the puzzle that I've been able to do across my career is that you have to have role clarity. And so with role clarity also comes responsibility, comes authority, and then also comes accountability. And so you have to foster a environment where role clarity, and this is even at home, so I find myself oftentimes with my wife and I, as we're raising our 17-year-old, in terms of how unified we have to be.
One can't go to mom or dad and doesn't know what, exactly.
That's right. And so role clarity is front and center. We're not here to be friends. We're here to be parents, first and foremost. And so, the third piece of the puzzle is also around thinking about your life's journey as a whole, whether you are a single individual, whether you are a family member, whether you're an executive or an employee, you've also got to have a plan. And I think, first, trust, second, role clarity, third is developing and executing a plan, whether it's your lifelong plan for learning, whether it's personal growth, whether it's your vision for your company. And then the fourth thing that I look for and try to foster in my organization is the way you go about doing your business or demeanor. And I think with those four things, for me, that's been a recipe for success across the many organizations that I've had a chance to work with and lead.
See, and I think, again, those I'm going to call those mini truths, right, for the organizational culture, because to me, when you set, here's role clarity, that's a truth, right? I know what my role is. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know who I report to or who reports to me, right? It's clarity, like you said. The other is, I think, I love how you said that, because it makes for, when you have trust, right, you have authenticity. So now I've built up some stuff in the bank, so to speak, right? In the olden days, we used to say, have those deposits in the bank. So that I don't automatically feel like Parveen is out to get me, right? He's not out to, point a finger at me if someone should do something wrong. You already know that person has your back. And I think that is a lot of what we're missing in today's country. And that's what we need to do as better, again, Christians, or those that really believe in a higher power or God, is we're supposed to be helping each other, right? We're not supposed to be, trying to, I say this in my book too, it's not a win-lose kind of a game, right? It should be a win-win, because we're all in this together. So I think you did a great job saying that. As we kind of wrap up here from life experience, again, I think there's really one main truth, right, as a Christian, and that's got to be somehow line up with God's view of what he thinks is most important. And to me, the real truth should be good for everyone, right? So truth should never be bad for a part of the population, I'm going to say, or whatever, if we're looking at a bigger world. So I think it's easier sometimes for a lot of leaders not to want to get involved. So when two of your employees are having confrontation, it's easier sometimes, even as parents. And I love how you said that. We've got to start being better parents and not try to be friends, right? So if two kids are arguing over something, you don't just say, oh, let them work it out, no one cares. I mean, we've got to engage and help them understand what that looks like. As we kind of wrap up here, going back to speaking, putting more power to truth versus just speaking truth to power first. What's your thought on, in terms of, there's so much emotion around political correctness in our society, and I think actual truth sometimes and those facts get set aside because we're all trying to figure out what the base rules are, right? And it seems to be a moving game for a lot of people. Do you have any thoughts on that? I guess it's difficult to be authentic when you're in a state of constant worry of, what am I going to do wrong?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So in that model I was talking about earlier of building trust, having role clarity, developing a plan, executing a plan, and then doing it with vigor and having that mindset that you're going to get things done. Where we currently are with labels, and that's where I found myself in the last, we as a country, I think, have found ourselves in the last 4 or 5 years. Labels don't do us any good. And so the political environment, and you and I, agreed before the show that we weren't going to get too political, but it's apparent to me that you can't really have trust, you can't really have an executable plan, if you will, without embracing all and different viewpoints, and you have to create that environment without the label. So what I found success in is teasing out those that really, and it's through that diversity that you actually can bring different viewpoints to make the whole stronger. And so one of the key things that we've got to do is embrace how others that are not like us think about things, because having a very antagonistic view won't serve the greater good. However, having a real dialogue with those that are across the aisle from you and understanding their viewpoint and also helping them understand your viewpoint. It's just as important for them to understand your viewpoint than it is to just understand theirs. And so without the labels, I think getting to that diverse viewpoint is foundational to how we need to move the needle. So that could be something as simple as the good of a single community. It could be something as as vast as a big multi-billion-dollar business or a government. I think it's imperative for us to embrace each other and really seek to understand first.
Wait, I remember that in a Bible verse, wasn't it? Seek first to understand and then be understood.
That's exactly right.
Comes back to kindergarten 101 and CCD 101.
That's exactly what it is. Those foundational truths can't, they're there for a reason, and they're foundational for a reason. And I'm just thankful that, across my life's journey, I've been reminded of that in multiple stages. And I'm just thankful that I've had a chance to really reflect on those life lessons.
Well, and now comes the $1 million tough one. I'm going to make you put your parent hat back on and help the younger, right? That millennial, your son, daughters, my daughters, they're all 17 to 25. How do we help the younger generation understand that it's not you're wrong, I'm right, you're terrible, I'm great? I guess my point is, to me, what advice can we offer that younger generation in that when they're, I guess, spewing stuff that we might believe really is not true? We're trying to teach them the truth, but at the same time, they have a view, but everyone gets so emotional, right? So what advice do you have for parents and or for that younger generation of, look, maybe some ground rules, like you don't go screaming out of a room, or you don't have to hate that person just because they have a different opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me start off with, my seeking my own advice and putting this into practice. One is we owe it to ourselves and that generation, along with others, not to give up. So that's going to be key, not to give up. And so we may have 1, 2, or 3 dialogues with our own children or friends of our kids that show differing viewpoints. In some cases, there's vast difference in viewpoints. But don't give up. 2 is also making sure that generation, along with others, sees a greater good. It's not about themselves; it's a greater good. And I think we're somewhat fortunate that younger generation is already starting to think like that there is a greater good, but it may be misdirected. So I think we can bring it back in terms of the greater good. The third is also just leading by example. I think that's one of the things that we see often, but don't really pay attention to, that you have to lead by example. It's just not your word. It has to be action oriented. And then the fourth thing I would think I would come back to is, don't be afraid to reach out and take on that risk. You never know what's going to meet you on the other side. And oftentimes you'll find that there's a lot more commonality than there isn't. You just have to go out there and seek it.
No, I love what you say. Well, we're out of time. This show always goes so fast with great people like you on, Parveen. I sure appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoyed our lesson and our attempt of words of wisdom for everyone. So for those of you who'd like to learn more about enlightenment, peace, and prosperity through accountability, please join us and visit Carolina Catholic Radio. And again, I'm Lisa Feely, your host of An Accountable Catholic. God bless, and I hope we see you back here next Thursday night at 5 p.m. Thank you again, Parveen, for joining us.
Lisa, thank you very much for having me.